In this video, we're going to look at the wonders of the pivot table. We're going to show you how to use a pivot table to make sense of categorical and numerical data. I'm using here the example of the U.S. Census data, which comes from the U.S. labor unstacked data with respect to gender and educational attainment. All right, so an obvious issue of interest is the extent to which educational group and gender affect earnings. EPH stands for earnings per hour. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to create a pivot table. Now, how do you create a pivot table? Notice that the data is in 4 columns here. Each row is an observation and each column is a variable. If you click on the word insert, the very first thing you see over here, up here at the top, is insert pivot table. So we're going to click insert a pivot table. And actually, I did that wrong. I'm going to show you why. Notice that the cell that was selected was this one over here, F9. That is not part of the contiguous data that we're interested in, which actually goes from A1, shift control down arrow, to A7987. So there's a lot of data there, but it goes from columns A, B, C, and D. So let's just pick one cell. Doesn't matter which one, just any cell. And when you click Insert Pivot Table, if that cell is within the contiguous borders of the data, it will automatically select. Notice that it says Stacked Data ! That refers to the tab that the data is on, and then it says A1 to D7987. So it is Excel has cleverly figured out which data I want to put in a pivot table. So I don't have to do anything there. I just have to tell it where I want to put the pivot table. It's common to put it on a new worksheet, so we leave that as the default selected and just click OK. And when you do that, you get something like this. This is a unconstructed pivot table, and notice that the 4 variables are listed over here in the pivot table fields, and where they go is in one of these 4 boxes down here. So we could start by dragging gender, click on gender. You can either click it and drag it over to the columns thing over here. And you notice that our pivot table now has gender in the columns, F and M for female and male. That's one way to do it. We could then drag education, click on education, and drag it over here to the rows. And then we would have a breakdown of male and female gender and high school and university education. And we could put data values in there. That's one way to do it. Another way would be to drag education over here to the columns. And then notice that we have females in both high school and university, and then a column for totals, and then males, high school and university. And so there's a lot of different ways that you can slice and dice a pivot table. But let's go back and put education over here. So now we have just females and males in the columns and high school and university in the rows. Now, what values do we want to look at would probably be the earnings per hour. So let's drag earnings per hour over to the values. Now, what's interesting is the default kind of data that they give you is the sum. And that is meaningless to us right now. What does it mean, the sum? That means there were 1,574 females with a high school education. There were 2,772 males with a high school education. So that's kind of meaningless. And you can see here the total is the total number of people that were in there. What we really want is what is the average salary of people in those categories. So here we would right-click on the count where it says right here we can click on the down arrow and say Value Field Settings. Click on Value Field Settings. The default is Count. We want the average. So we're going to select Average of Earnings per Hour and click OK. Now we get something that's kind of ugly because it's not formatted the way we want. We know that this is all money, so let's select all of this and go back to the home screen and format it as money. Now you can either format it using accounting number format, which is popular, and that puts the $sign all the way over to the left of the cell and then the numbers to the right with 2 decimal places. Or you could actually click on this and go currency, which puts the $sign right next to the number, right next to the money itself. So this would be one way to make a simple pivot table that shows us the average earnings per hour of a high school educated female is $11.92. The average earnings per hour of a high school educated male is $14.88. And the grand total there average is $13.81. So that's how you make a pivot table. As soon as you click off of it, the design table goes away, but as soon as you click it again, the design table comes back. So that's our first introduction.